be willing and ready to have uncomfortable conversations with our children, relatives, friends, and peers who may have dissimilar perspectives. Think about it. If we're willing to listen without judgment, argument, or debate, we allow ourselves the opportunity to learn a dissimilar perspective and confront our biases, which we all have, as well as our assumptions, stereotypes, and all of that prohibits our growth. For example, our last episode was about social media addiction. And that's not an easy conversation to have with people we love who we may think are addicted to social media. It does require listening. And you can watch that episode on our website at thrivingwomennetwork.com or on e360tv.com. And today's conversation is another very controversial subject: adoption versus termination, adoption versus abortion. What should I choose? Now, as a reminder, it's not a political or public debate that we're having here. It's a very personal question. It involves life and death and the freedom for a mother to choose whether or not she wants to end an unwanted pregnancy versus going through with it to the very end and giving the baby up for adoption. And we're going to share some adoption stories from the biological parents, adoption parents, and the adopted child's perspectives. And by the end of today's conversation, some people may come to realize that for them, adoption may be a loving option to choose. So let's get started. If it's your first time tuning into our show, welcome. My name is CJ Grace. I'm the author of the comic self-help books, My Wild Ride, How to Thrive After Breast Cancer and Infidelity. And my first book was Adulterer's Wife, How to Thrive Whether You Stay or Not. And I'm very honored to host today's show with my friend, Jill McLennan, death doula, end-of-life coach, and podcaster. So, Jill, what are your thoughts on today's topic? Why does it matter? And, what do you think women should do when they have this difficult type of decision to make?
Yeah, it is a very important topic to have a honest and open discussion about. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and a lot of times it is not a choice that a woman easily makes. And so I think having discussions about it, allowing people to find resources that they could read both sides of it, is really going to help when it's time for somebody to make that decision, because it's not easy for anybody.
That's true. I mean, I think a lot of people, maybe conservatives, think it's a very easy decision for a woman just to go around having sex and then she can just have an abortion. No. It's not like that. It's a really hard decision for any woman to have to decide what to do with an unwanted pregnancy. And so, Jill, how are we honoring Earth Month? And what can we personally do to save the planet?
Well, here we're honoring Earth awareness by encouraging everybody to do our part. Earth Day is celebrated annually around the world to bring awareness to environmental causes, educate others on the importance of creating a more sustainable planet, encouraging advocacy, and work to conserve the planet's biodiversity. We are encouraging everyone to do their part to save our planet. And we really can do this in small ways. Of course, I think a lot of us grew up with the reduce, reuse, recycle. You can cut down on the amount that you throw away. You can volunteer in your community to help with cleanups. You can conserve water. You can use, sustainable options, long-lasting light bulbs. You can plant a tree. One of the things that I do is I live in New Jersey, so I plant a lot of native plants to help attract wildlife, whether it's the bees, but all different types of birds. They really need these spaces. And so in my yard, I plant things that will attract them, but it's all locally native to my area. So there's a lot of different things that you can do, large and small. And CJ, speaking on saving the earth, how is the Maui recovery going?
Yes, well, since the Maui wildfires back in August 13th, 2023, we've had a lot of problems here on Maui in the sense that there's a ton of toxic waste that was produced in Lahaina when the town burnt down. And there was a temporary site where they were moving some of that waste to that was not a great choice because it's near a very pristine and important reef in the Hawaiian Islands, Olawalu. So there is a move to move that waste again to a second site, but every time the waste is moved, the toxic ash flies off the trucks and goes all over the place. So it's really not a brilliant situation, and we hope that that problem is going to be resolved. There are also problems in terms of housing all the people that have been made homeless as a result of the fires. And I can see quite a lot of tiny homes are being built here on the island, but it's a slow process getting the people in there. There's a ton of red tape to get those houses being usable. I know that Steve Colkins from Hungry Heroes Hawaii has a really good project where he has 88 homes that he's got funding for, plus more funding if that is approved. And he's done he's got through a lot of the red tape for it, but I'm not sure whether he's got to the end, which would involve a signature from Josh Green, our governor here. But things have been going much more slowly than I would have anticipated. For example, when we had Hurricane Iniki in the islands, when Kauai was very badly hit, a lot of the permit process was simplified. It was made much more easy for people to rebuild. They were given a lot more assistance, and things were done more speedily, way more speedily than they seem to be doing things here on Maui. And there's also an investigation going because there's a lot of controversy over the actual cause of the fire and handling of it. It does seem that certain things were done that were really not great. Like, for example, Front Street was closed off before the fire happened, and people could not get out. And a lot of people died in their cars because they couldn't get out, and police stopped people exiting that Front Street area. So there's a lot of high feelings about what went on, and and what was the cause. Some people have said it's global warming, but going back to the almanacs, the temperatures have not really been rising substantially on the Hawaiian island of Maui. In fact, the hottest year was 1931, I think. So to blame the fires on global warming does seem to be incorrect. So yeah, it's a mixed bag right now, the Maui recovery. It definitely has been a slow process, and we're many months away from when the fire happened, and a lot of people are still living in hotels or homeless, and people who have homes in Lahaina, even if those weren't burnt down, some of them can't even go back to them because they have no utilities there. So it is problematic.
Yeah, that is really an unfortunate circumstance, and I hope that things can move a little quicker so that everybody can try to return back to somewhat normal. And CJ, do you want to tell us about our first adoption story and whose perspective it's coming from?
Yes, we're going to look at it from the adoptive parents' perspective, and listen to the love and affection that they have for their adopted child before they've even met him. So let's take a listen.
Good job, Frankie.
We met 11, 12 years ago at a birthday party.
Let's see if Frankie's better than Bobby.
Dated for about a year, got married, had our first daughter named Charlie. She's 10 going on 30. She's a very mature, very smart girl. She's got a huge heart. She's the girl that will take the 4 and 5-year-olds' hands when they're walking up to school in the morning and walk with them. Yeah, she's like a big sister to the neighborhood. 5 years later, we had Dominic.
Dominic is just a fun-loving little boy, and he's got these sweet moments that they're so unexpected, they're great. He wants to make you laugh. If he makes me laugh when I'm putting him to bed or something, then he's excited to tell Dave about it in the morning.
Yeah. Those two kids embraced having Frankie kind of the same way we did, like a gift. There's never been a day I feel like they've been inconvenienced. They felt like they're gaining something by having him around more than missing any of our attention. See a little person grow up right before your eyes. It's just one of the most special things that a person can have. Excited for all the firsts again. The first time you bring the baby home, walking through the front door of your house. The first time our kids get to meet this little baby, I think will be an extremely special day. We're just really looking forward to it. April 19th is when we get the phone call saying there's a woman in Detroit that selected you guys. We discussed it through the weekend and, signed everything and sent it back first thing Monday morning to say that we agreed to this and we're going to go forward with it. And then it was Monday morning at like 5:40 a.m. We got a phone call saying the mother is going into labor. We got the kids at school. My brother happens to live in Kansas City, so he was going to be able to watch them for us. So we hopped in the car, threw our bags in, and then just took off driving to Detroit. It was like a 32-hour labor for the mother. So we got there in plenty of time. And then
yeah, I think the thing about that particular story is that I think the mother took a long time to decide that she actually wanted to let the baby go, and finally she did. So it is a very, very tough decision to make, to give your child up for adoption if you can't raise the child yourself. So over to you, Joel.
Yeah, when we come back from our break, we will discuss why adoption can be a loving option for some women. During the break, we will hear a teen mom's perspective on why she gave up her child for adoption and how she prepared her child for the future. Uncomfortable Conversations is sponsored by Thriving Women University, an affiliate of the Thriving Women Network. If you want to produce a franchise show, TWN provides the media network training, coaching, and mentoring to produce your franchise show. For more info, visit our website.
I made this video so that you know how much I love you. I wanted to tell you why I've made the decision to place you with your family.
I was not really anticipating it, obviously. I was actually kind of naive about the whole pregnancy thing. I didn't want to think about adoption, like it wasn't a part of my vocabulary. And so for about 2 months, I was kind of like, maybe I can be a mom. Maybe I can do this. And I realized like the more time went on, I was like, no, I can't. I was looking for families, looked through thousands and thousands on adoption.com. And so I come across Brad and Emily's profile, and I was about 7 months pregnant. And there was something inside of me that was like, this is it, this is the family. And so we got to go through all the little baby clothes together and put together his crib and all that. And so like I was included in all of it. And I was there when Emily had her baby shower. I remember as soon as I gave birth to Tag and I heard him cry, I was able to like reach down and feel his arm, and I touched him and I was like, how am I going to do this? And it really hit me what I was doing as I was holding him in my arms. The baby is yours until you sign the papers, but they don't do placement until 48 hours after, which is generally when you're discharged from the hospital.
Well, that's our uncomfortable conversation today. And if you're just tuning into the show, Our topic is adoption versus termination. What should you choose? Well, the trouble is, since the overturn of Roe versus Wade, there has been the loss of abortion access in many states, so women cannot choose in their own states to terminate their pregnancies. And some conservative leaders have suggested that abortion is unnecessary because of the option of adoption. They argue people don't need to terminate unwanted pregnancies because they can seek adoption placements after giving birth. However, according to Melinda Seymour, a law professor at Texas A&M University School of Law who researches and teaches adoption law, she was quoted in the Texas Tribune in August 2022 with these words: "Adoption doesn't do what abortion does. It does not end a pregnancy. It does not relieve the burden of pregnancy. It does not avoid the harm and risks of pregnancy. And it does not alleviate the psychosocial harm of relinquishing for adoption. It is not at all a substitute for abortion." Well, as a reminder, our show is not a political, religious, or public debate. And this is a personal question on life and death and requires a knowledge of all the options. However, if you are in certain states, for example, Alabama, Arkansas, Idaho, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, West Virginia, and most likely Arizona, if you don't have the resources to travel to a different state, abortion is not an option. So that is that's cutting down the choices of mothers in those states. So today we're going to share adoption stories from the biological parents, adoption parents, and the adopted child's perspective, and give you an idea of why some have come to realize that adoption can be a loving option. So Jill, what was going through your mind watching a teenager creating a video on why she chose adoption?
I mean, honestly, there was a lot going through my mind because in our country, there's not access to the healthcare that women need to have a healthy pregnancy unless you're in a certain demographic. And so, you know, watching that young woman talk about it, she obviously had to have had support by her family. She had to have had access to healthcare. She had to have access to a lot of things that there's young women in this country, they don't have access to. And so going through with carrying that baby all the way to the birth is not something that is easy to do. I mean, if anybody's ever had a child, they know that. And so I love that she was able to do it and that she was able to find a family that she felt was a good fit. But that's not the reality for a lot of teenage women. And so again, it's complicated. It's a really complicated issue and there's no easy answer. But, you know, it definitely brings up a lot of different thoughts about how there's just access for some people that others are not able to get. And, you know, that's okay. That's why we're having this conversation. And in the next video, we're going to hear parents talking about why they chose adoption and maybe some of the regrets they maybe had.
One question I get asked often is if I regret my decision, and I'm newly married, and so this question has come up a lot, more so tailored to, do I regret placing him now that I'm married? And the answer is absolutely not, because I know without a doubt I would not have met my husband if it wasn't for, you know, things that happened along my journey of adoption. And he is where he's meant to be. That's it, you know, and I celebrate his beautiful family and his life every single day. And so there's no way I could say that at all, because it's beautiful that, you know, he has the life that he does. and so do I, because of adoption.
I think some people, I think if you're even entertaining adoption, or if you're curious about it, some part of you believes in it. Some part of you believes that there's good and value in adoption. And, you know, people ask me, it's like, no, I don't regret it. Are there days where I'm like, oh, I wish we were running around my house and in the backyard? You know, I wish I heard those little feet and that little squealy voice. But it doesn't change that he's exactly where he wants to be. And I could never regret it. It was the most amazing decision of my entire life. And my life would not be what it was.
Yeah.
And his life would not be anywhere near what he has now.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are days where it sucks. It sucks a lot. And it's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go home. Nope, I don't want to play anymore. But it doesn't take away from the fact that he's exactly where he wants to be. Just like with relationships, there's some days where it's like, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. So, but that doesn't change. It doesn't change how I feel about you. Days are just days. It doesn't detract from the decision I made and the feelings that I have.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times when I'm having really down or sad moments, people take that as, oh, she must regret her decision. And I always tell people, even in my darkest moment, in the most painful moment, I have never once had a regret for signing those papers. Not once. Just because I'm sad, just because you may find me collapsed on the floor sobbing my eyes out, does not mean I regret my decision. Like you said earlier, the perfect description is the happiest sad. Yeah, it's sad and it hurts, but it's also one of the happiest and most joyous things that I've ever done.
So CJ, what did you learn from listening to the parents about their experience?
I would have liked to have known what their access was to abortions and whether that would have changed the decisions that they made to take the pregnancy to full term. I come from a society in Britain. When I was growing up, when I was a young single woman, we had free contraception and abortion on demand. It was £100 to have an abortion. And we didn't have huge amounts of abortions. We had a fairly low abortion rate in Britain because we had free contraception. And there was no stigma attached to abortion. There's no stigma attached to contraception. There was no stigma attached to having sex outside marriage. And because of that, I think that women had more freedom. And I think it's rather sad now that women's freedom has been so restricted in so many states. And the problem is that the overturning of Roe versus Wade disproportionately affects poorer women, because well-off women can afford to travel to wherever they can get an abortion or whatever treatment they want. And they can afford to have, as you said, good facilities, good healthcare facilities for a pregnancy that they want to take to term. It's the poorer women who are the most affected by legislation banning abortion. And so it's a really difficult decision. And it reminds me of a movie that I saw, a wonderful movie with Judi Dench. It was called Philomena. Came out in 2013. And it's about, based in Ireland in the 1950s, it's about forcible adoptions in Catholic Ireland. Starred Judi Dench and Steve Logan. And Steve Logan plays a journalist who tries to help Judi Dench's character, when she's in her 50s, find the baby that she had to give up for adoption. And sadly, the baby, by that time, her son had died, so she never had a chance to actually meet him. But in those days, the women that had that got pregnant outside marriage were thrown into these, they had to work in these laundries run by the Catholic nuns, and it was like a penitence basically, and they weren't allowed to keep their babies. So it would be horrible to go back to those times, and horrible to go back to the times of coat hanger dangerous abortions. So my view is, yes, it's a very difficult decision to make, but it should be the woman's right to choose, really. So there you go. But we'd love for you to join our conversation. So you can join our private Facebook group called Thriving Women TV and post your own questions or comments about this very controversial issue. And during our YouTube break, we're going to hear another adoption story from a parent who gave up her child for adoption at 2 years old. So listen to why she did that. And don't forget, Uncomfortable Conversations is sponsored by Thriving Women University, an affiliate of the Thriving Women Network. And if you want to produce a franchise show, TWN provides the media network training, coaching, and mentoring to do just that. If you want to find out more information, visit our website, thrivingwomennetwork.com. We'll be right back after the video.
I didn't have a reliable support system, and it just felt really unstable. I started feeling this intense emotion that my son deserved better, and I felt like it would just be selfish to keep him in that kind of situation. I had all of the documents spewed out on the table, right? And my son came home from daycare and he climbed up on the table. He picked up some random poster and was like, "Mama." And I had actually chose a different family, but American Adoptions sent me a confined list that was catered to my specific needs for my son. And guess who was on there? The family that my son had chose. Something in my heart clicked, like, okay, this is where you're supposed to be. I'm just gonna listen to this feeling. And it was just the best decision that I've ever made.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Post-adoption for me, it started off very, very rocky. But then after I realized, oh my goodness, my son's really with a great family that loves them and that loves me, the healing process started to mold itself into growth. And I have my son in the back of my mind every single day with every decision that I make. He's definitely given me that momentum to just keep moving forward.
Welcome back to Uncomfortable Conversations. If you're just tuning into the show, our topic today is adoption versus termination. What should you choose? As a reminder, the show's not political, religious, or this isn't supposed to be a public debate. It's really just a personal question that we're, giving you some knowledge and some education about all the different options. And we are going to share in today's show some adoption stories from biological parents, adoptive parents, and the adopted child's perspective. But one of the things that we haven't actually heard in any of the stories so far is there are some women that place their babies up for adoption, and then they will experience something called adoption birth mother trauma, which is trauma that is basically physical and psychological responses that birth mothers feel after they place their baby up for adoption. It can include feelings of guilt, denial, shame, hopelessness, depression, right? There's a lot of different things that happen for women on both sides of the spectrum. And so by the end of today's conversation, some of you may come to realize that adoption is the best option for you, while for others, it might not be. And so, CJ, what are your thoughts on the last video?
Well, I think it was very clear that that mother didn't have the resources to raise her child in a way that she thought was best for him. And again, I would say, well, it's a shame that she didn't have those resources. It's a shame that she couldn't afford maybe childcare or didn't have a good job that allowed her to bring that child up to the level of that she would have liked, with enough money to give the child what she felt the child needed. So yeah, I mean, it was a very, very tough decision for her. And I think she made the best decision she could given her personal circumstances. But had she been wealthier, I don't think she would have made the same choice to give up the child.
Yeah.
So
And
again, it's the same story. It's to do with disadvantaged people having to make choices that are very difficult for them and that they might not make if they had more resources at their fingertips.
yes, I completely agree with that. And next, we're going to listen to adopted children speaking on this topic about, their experiences.
So I'm going to say the beginning of a sentence, and then you're going to finish it.
Got it.
My birth mom is...
Jen. My birth mother is Dorothy.
Okay, so you want to say something about her rather than...
Oh! Is we're going to have to redo that one?
Don't worry about it. My birth mom is...
Amazing. She's just always there.
My birth mother is
Awesome. Smart.
Aw.
My birth mother is kind, funny, and beautiful. My birth mother is very kind, generous, and she loves cats. My birth mother is immeasurably awesome.
My birth mother is revered.
My birth mother is nice, kind, generous, and thoughtful, and I love her.
Adoption means...
Become whole. Adoption means when someone has a baby, but she can't take care of it really well.
They weren't in the tummy, they were in someone else's, and they were also born from somebody else.
Adoption means you have two families. One is the family that gave you life, and the other family is the family that gave you a home. Adoption means life.
Adoption means forever.
Because of adoption, I am...
Who I am. Because of adoption, I am special. Because of adoption, I have a family, a sister, and a lot of pets.
I have brothers to play with now.
Because of adoption, you are
Adopted?
Yes.
Because of adoption, I am...
I think I'm different and special.
You think you're special?
Mm-hmm, I'm different.
Yeah. In a good way or a bad way?
Good way.
Yeah. Why is it in a good way? Just it is?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I go ahead and hit the button.
So during our break, we're going to have another break and we're going to hear from another parent who gave up her child for adoption only to receive a call from her child to meet her. So, because that's one of the problems when you give up your child for adoption, generally, unless it's an open adoption, you do not have the right to stay in contact with that child. And it can be very, very difficult for the parents, for the birth parents, the birth mother to deal with that. So let's hear this story. We're going to stay tuned for that. And again, don't forget, Uncomfortable Conversations is sponsored by Thriving Women University, an affiliate of the Thriving Women Network. And if you want to produce your very own franchise show, TWN provides the media network training and coaching and mentoring to do just that. So for more information, where do you go? You go to our website, thrivingwomennetwork.com. We'll be right back after this video.
I figured the best thing was to put her up for adoption where that someone could love her and give her everything she needed. But that didn't mean that ache inside that I'd stop loving that child because she was a part of me. I thought about her every day, but in time it got easier and easier, and then especially after I got married and then had my own child, But there's always still that place in your heart for that other child, you know.
Did it make you feel good to hear that she was looking for you?
Yes, that was a miracle for me.
Yeah.
Because as the mother, I give my rights away to search for this child when I signed that paper. So she had to reach out. I couldn't reach out. I couldn't interfere in her life. She had to be the one to look for me, and she did. When I learned she found me, I looked at my daughter, and I said, I've got something to tell you. I said, I have a daughter. And she just went crazy. She says, Mama, why didn't you tell me? Then I went into, trying to explain to her. And she says, that's all right, Mama. I always wanted a big sister. So it was at the right time.
I have met your daughter. Her name is Shannon. As you hoped, she did have a wonderful life. 2 very loving parents.
Oh, good, good.
And Shannon did send a picture along. Would you like to see that?
Yes.
This is your daughter, Shannon.
Oh, isn't she beautiful? How could I have such a beautiful child? She's beautiful. I feel the love. Thank you, Jesus.
How does that make you feel to finally see a picture of her?
I can't express. There's no amount of money that could take back this moment in my life. If I was to die tonight, I would die happy.
Do you feel that burden of secrecy has been lifted?
Yes. I'm proud to say that she's my daughter. I can't wait to see her.
Welcome back to Uncomfortable Conversations. If you're just tuning into the show, our topic today is adoption versus termination. What should you choose? And when you listen to all of the stories, there's a question that comes to mind. There's this idea that there's a shortage of babies to adopt in the United States. And yes, on one hand, this is true. It depends on the type of adoption that people are looking for. So for a private adoption, if people are looking for infants under the age of 1, adoptions, there's only about 36 waiting families for every infant placed for adoption. But when you factor in race, health, things like that, it can go up to over 100 waiting families for every adopted infant. On the other hand, in 2023, the CDC reported that there were 930,160 abortions in the United States. But the thing is some statistics show that the only quote unquote shortage is for healthy white newborns. So there are a huge number of children in our country and worldwide who need loving homes, but they've not been adopted because there isn't a family that's been willing to take on a special needs child, a child of color, or an older child. They only want infants. And so again, this kind of puts a lot of different things to think about when we're talking about this topic. And so CJ, what's some of your understanding on today's topic? And what do you think that we can do to kind of better educate people on the different options available?
Well, I think it would be great if the mothers themselves had more education, more access to contraception to prevent unwanted pregnancies. And I think it's very tough for women with unwanted pregnancies if they live in these states that, since the overturn of Roe versus Wade, in these states where abortion is illegal, because they don't have the right to choose adoption versus termination. So it isn't a choice, it is forced upon them. And in those circumstances, if you can't leave your state, if you don't have a lot of money, if you don't have resources, and you don't want to raise the baby, you don't even have the resources to raise the baby, you're a young single woman, whatever it is, then yes, you would. I can understand exactly why you would choose to give your child up for abortion, because that may be the only choice that you have. And it was interesting that you were talking about the different kinds of newborns available for adoption, and how healthy white newborns are the only ones that are in short supply. It's very, very difficult for mixed race kids to get adopted. It's very difficult for older kids to get adopted. It's very difficult for special needs kids to get adopted. And we seem to have a bit of an epidemic in special needs kids being born these days, and autism and those kinds of problems, Down syndrome, those kinds of issues. Those kinds of children are going to be much, much harder to place. And the other problem with older kids is that sometimes they go from one foster home to another, or they go from one adoption home that hasn't worked out to another. And in some of these places, they aren't even in a safe environment. They may be preyed upon by older children, or even by their step parents. I've read a lot about children in foster care and children in not great adoption circumstances having to deal with sexual molestation, physical abuse, all of those kinds of things. So it absolutely is not a black and white process to say that a child is going to have you're giving a child a better life by having them up for adoption, rather than necessarily raising them yourself or terminating the pregnancy. There's a lot of different issues here, and it's a very, very gray area. But there are some resources. There's American Adoption is one resource on that you can learn how the adoption process works, and it brings people together to give a baby a life hopefully filled with love and opportunity. And at least in this country, we have some good resources for adoption. In decades past, a lot of people chose to adopt babies from out of the country, war-torn areas. For example, Korea, a lot of families adopted babies from Korea after the Korean War. Those went well, but it generally, and babies were adopted from Vietnam. Babies have been adopted from Romania and places like that, where they really had a very difficult life if they weren't brought to the United States. So, but sadly, a lot of these countries have actually closed down that adoption process, even though they have plenty of children that are in orphanages and not in great circumstances. So those children, especially children from outside America, would absolutely benefit from being adopted in the US if the paperwork and the rules for that were made a little bit easier. But if you want to go to American Adoption and find out the steps of how to do that, you can go to AmericanAdoption.com. That's AmericanAdoption.com. Don't forget, Uncomfortable Conversations is sponsored by Thriving Women University, an affiliate of the Thriving Women Network. And if you want to produce a franchise show, TWN provides the media network training, coaching, and mentoring to do just that. For more information, visit our website, thrivingwomennetwork.com.
Did you want to keep her?
I did, and my mom said I could not come home with her.
Had you been pregnant with a white man's child, do you think that would have changed it at all?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, you want to know what she said to me?
What?
She said, I don't care if you have a dozen kids and not be married, as long as they're not African American. Mm-hmm.
I have to know, how did you come up with the name Barbarina?
Barbarina Kathleen. I'm a romantic, and I read romance novels, and the heroine or whatever in this particular book was Barbarina, and Kathleen, and that is my mother's middle name. And yes, I did that out of kind of meanness towards my mother.
So you had decided that you were going to place her for adoption?
Yes. I was asked, do you want an all-white couple? Do you want a black couple or a mixed couple? And I said I want a black couple. I think that there would have been less racial tension rather than have a white and a black parent. I think having all one was maybe less. I could have been totally wrong, but that was just how I felt.
She was forced, it felt like, from a social standpoint, to choose who she was. She never fit in. She never fit in. She wasn't white enough for the white kids. She wasn't black enough for the black kids.
I can tell you this, with my existing family, they're all colorblind. I've raised my kids, my grandkids. There's no racism, no prejudice. And she will be whatever she wants to be. And we will love her that way. And they all will.
Would you like to see what your little girl looks like?
Yes.
This is your daughter.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh God. So beautiful. Oh my gosh. I have so much love in my life with my kids, my husband, my grandkids. And then to know that I hopefully have hers is just the icing on the cake. Life couldn't get any better. I'll take all the chemo in the world for that.
Wow, what a story. And she was obviously undergoing a treatment for cancer when she was talking about chemo. And I noticed the hat that she had on. I remember that from when I went through chemo. You had these caps you could wear to hide the fact that you didn't have any hair. That wasn't a stage I liked very much, going hairless. I don't look good bald, let me tell you. Not like Joan London on the cover of People magazine. I wasn't like that, no. But it's a really tough decision, and with that particular lady being forced, she was forced to give her child up for adoption because her parents would not accept the fact that it was going to be a mixed race child. And it's very, very sad. I don't know what your feelings are for about that particular video. I found that one really kind of touched my heartstrings big time.
Yeah, it is really sad that her parents, due to their, inability to accept a child because of its race, forced her to give up the baby. It sounds like she would have wanted to keep the baby if she had the option. And, that's the thing too. A lot of the videos that we've been watching today, where the mothers talked about making the decision, it sounded more like they were talking about the decision whether to keep the baby or give the baby up for adoption. There didn't seem to be too much dialogue about choosing between, choosing to abort versus having the child. And, a lot of what I had read is some mothers choose abortion versus adoption because of some of the things that CJ, you mentioned earlier, that, you never know. If you put a child up for adoption, they can really end up in a terrible situation with abuse and neglect. And that wasn't something that these women wanted for their child. So it seemed to them that it was a better option to have the abortion earlier on before, the fetus essentially was even a child. That just seemed like their best option. And again, there's no good options. I have to say I was lucky enough that I always had access to birth control. I never had to make that decision. But there's a lot of women that if they don't have access to birth control, pregnancies happen all the time by mistake. It's not something that, I ever wanted to make that decision. But unfortunately, a lot of women, they do have to. And for some, abortion is the right choice. For others, adoption is the right choice. It really is individual depending on the person.
And the thing is that in the states where abortion is banned, it's even if the woman, if it's rape or incest, there are no exceptions. This is the thing. So it wasn't even, you can't even blame the woman for being promiscuous. She's gone out and she should have been married before she had sex. It's all her fault. So she better raise the baby or give it up. She's not allowed to have an abortion. So, I mean, Alabama, Arkansas, Idaho, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, West Virginia, and probably Arizona, you have pretty much total banned with no exception for rape or incest. It is really like going back into the dark ages, into the coat hanger age, where you had to go into a dark alley and have a dangerous abortion with a coat hanger, which you might not survive, or you might never be able to raise children again, bear children again after that particular process. It's like we're going back into those circumstances. So especially when you have a situation where even if the woman didn't choose to get pregnant, didn't choose to have sexual intercourse, you've got these states now where she's not going to be able to have an abortion. So what is she going to do? Yeah, she's going to take the pregnancy to full term and give the child up. And that is much, much tougher. If you don't want to keep the baby, it is much tougher to have the pregnancy go to term and have to go through all the hormonal changes that you go through when you're pregnant, and to actually go through labor and delivery, and then you see this little creature, this little baby. Well, obviously you're going to feel affection and feel a connection to the baby. That's part of all these hormones are supposed to be doing to you. That's a very, very different situation to having an early stage abortion, where you don't grow into having a relationship with the baby. It's a whole different situation. If I were in that circumstance, there is absolutely no question I would always choose an early stage abortion over taking the pregnancy to term and going through with an adoption. There's no doubt in my mind that's what the route I would choose. And I'm very grateful that, given the fact that we always had access to contraception in the places where I was, I never had to make that choice. Just like you, we were, middle class, living in safer, wealthier areas. We had those options. And the problem is the poorer women, as I said all the way through the show, it's the poorer women, the women of color. Those people are more disproportionately affected by laws against abortion.
Yes. And you mentioned the, idea of like the coat hanger abortions. It's not that abortion's going to go away. Just having access to safe abortions is what is being, taken away from women. And there's a lot of states too that when they took away the right for doctors to give women abortions, even under medical conditions, these doctors are now leaving the states. So not only are the women losing access to abortions, they're losing access to prenatal care. They're losing access to having doctors that can care for them during their pregnancy, high-risk pregnancies. It's really causing a lot of unexpected, I think, consequences that people are just, viewing the issue as black and white. It's either, saving a baby or it's the death of a baby. And it's really not that easy. And it's unfortunate because a lot of people, and you mentioned it many times, the poorer people, especially the poorer women, the women of color, are the ones that are going to suffer the most from it. Because you're right, rich white women, they're still going to get their abortions. They're just going to go to a state where they can, and it's not going to affect them the same way.
Well, it's also they're poor white women who are just in the same boat as the women of color. But it's definitely an economic issue that is going to disproportionately affect the poor. No question at all about this.
Mm-hmm. And adoption is the right choice for some women. And I think that's amazing if people have that opportunity and if that works for them. One of my best friends, she adopted a child because she was not able to have one on her own. And I think it's wonderful. I'm glad she had that. But it's definitely not the right choice for every birth mother. And this young woman, knows who her birth mother is, but has no relationship. And she's got some complicated feelings about the whole situation. It's not always just those rosy ideas that were shown in some of the videos. Like, adopted children do sometimes have complicated, relationships and complicated feelings about the fact that their mothers gave them up for adoption. So again, there's just a lot to think about, way more than we can cover in a 1-hour show. But that's why I hope that we gave people, some food for thought, gave them some different things that they can look into and research and read about and think about.
So as you probably realized, our topic today was adoption versus termination. And this is Uncomfortable Conversations. And we want to thank our viewers from around the world for supporting our discussion today. And we hope that you were enlightened and encouraged, empowered to have this conversation with your children, grandchildren, and friends so that they can get the knowledge they need to make the best decision that they can.
And if you have any comments about today's topic or for us, join our Thriving Women TV Facebook group and post your experience so we can learn. Don't forget to tune in to Every Child Can Learn TV today, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Their mission is to reimagine education and make learning simple for children. Uncomfortable Conversations is sponsored by Thriving Women University, an affiliate of the Thriving Women Network. If you want to produce your franchise show, TWN provides the media network training, coaching, and mentoring to do just that. For more information, visit thrivingwomennetwork.com.
And we will be back next week with more Uncomfortable Conversations.